kicking things back off. Again, we had to make this podcast into two parts because we had so much to talk about. So without further ado, the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap with guest star Mike Molyneaux continues now with part 2. Welcome into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. The second half of the NBA season is upon us, and to celebrate, myself and John Sapichetti are bringing in an old friend from our Boston Herald radio days, Mike Molyneaux. Mike, welcome into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast.
It's always a pleasure to join alongside you two and do a show, podcast, whatever it is. I always love doing it. It's always a good time.
Sap, I feel like, did you find Mike when we were doing it at the Herald? You were like the recruiter of these like uncovered gems, like myself.
Absolutely. I was pretty much the general manager of Herald Radio. I didn't get paid as the general manager. I was paid more as, one of the people. But, I used to, they gave me all the liberty to just bring people in. So, I met you through 1510. And a lot of other people that worked at 1510. And then I think Mike had contacted me, or it was maybe Kyle Draper.
It was through Draper.
He contacted me. It was through Drapes, who said, Mike's been interning at then Comcast Sportsnet. And so I just reached out to Mike, and Mike started coming in. And, you and Jet would gang up on me on basketball, football, baseball, every other sport. But I like that. I like being the underdog. But Mike's awesome, and it's great to hear his voice again.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Always.
Yep. Even though we're all in remote locations, we can still do this together, which is really nice. And maybe not for that much longer. We can start to actually get together again in person.
Yeah.
Getting close. It's getting close.
We're getting there. But we have Mike on because he is, first of all, I want him on because he's a huge Celtics fan like myself. So I need the backup with Sap. But Mike is also a basketball junkie like Mr. Sapichetti and myself. So I know he's going to have some good fiery takes. He has some really strong takes sometimes and some terrible takes. I'm thinking specifically about baseball, where he kept thinking Dustin Pedroia was going to come back and win MVPs for the Red Sox. That hurt his credibility quite a bit. But, you got to shake it off. As a professional, you can't always have great takes.
Hey, man, that Dustin Pedroia one really hurt. And it still eats at me now. But, I'll take it in stride, keep pushing forward, wish him the best in retirement and all that good stuff.
Nothing as bad as my take that Bill Belichick's final game with the Patriots was going to be Super Bowl 49 over the Seattle Seahawks. I thought that was going to be his final game as Patriots head coach, and he stuck around and won a couple more Super Bowls, but stuck around enough to push Tom Brady out of town. But that was a bad take as well.
Well, and our former producer, Christian Burgoyne's take was that Jared Goff was the heir apparent to Tom Brady as the best quarterback in the NFL. That one might top it all. What I'm finding out is I have no takes that can have holes poked in them right now. All of my takes have been very solid.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're in the clear right now. You're in the clear right now.
Yeah, not really, Mike, because I remember you and Jet believed that Kyrie Irving was going to sign this long-term deal with the Celtics, and Christian and I were like, no way, don't believe a word that comes out of Kyrie's mouth, and he was gone on his way to Brooklyn. So Christian and I were redeemed on that one.
I accepted the fact that I drank the Kyrie Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I got hoodwinked, and I saw the commercials and the statements that he wanted to be here forever and his name in the rafters. I believed it all. And then, bang, the balloon popped.
Yep.
I think
sure did.
Unless you, Sap, can find the audio of me saying that, I refuse to believe that I thought Kyrie was going to stay here. I think I was on top of it the whole time.
I've looked for all the audio from Boston Herald Radio. It's all gone. Even
my
good takes, my bad takes.
They burned the building down.
It's gone. Yeah, there's nothing left. They sold them off in auction, so there's no audio from Boston Herald Radio. So people are just going to have to take our good word for it.
Well, fortunately, we don't have to look to the past anymore because we can look to the future, Sap, and not just in life, but in basketball, which to many people is, life. For me, that's pretty much all I do anyhow. The NBA has returned tonight to relatively meaningless games, but everybody gets back into action tomorrow. The games tonight are because these teams like the Grizzlies and Spurs missed like 8 games because of COVID stuff, so they have to start making up games. But there's a lot of basketball left to be played, and we're at the de facto halfway point with the All-Star break having just happened and the All-Star game having happened on Sunday. Sap and I broke that down on Monday. And so really what we're going to do is look forward to the second half of the season and see if any bold predictions we make today will come true. And there will be audio receipts for that. I can guarantee you the audio is not going anywhere for this podcast because I'm in charge of it instead of some people who I don't know who even was running the Boston Herald when we left, some people in Minnesota. So I promise you, Sap, whatever bad take you or Mike has today will come back to haunt you when the NBA Finals happen and Marcus Smart is named MVP of the NBA Finals. First bold prediction.
Right. There you go. That's a good one. That would be the most unlikely MVP Finals ever.
Yeah.
Well, as it stands today, that is looking unlikely. But I want to know from you guys, off the top of your head, because we talked about this prior to the show, I gave you a heads up that we were going to do some bold predictions. Is there anything particularly outrageous that you think may happen, whether it be a trade, a team coming from nowhere, a team dropping off? I'll start with you, Sap. Any huge bold prediction you have for the second half of the season? Not mundane. I want something earth-shattering.
Right, because mundane would be Lakers, Clippers will fight it out to see who wins the West, and Philadelphia and Brooklyn will fight it out to see who's
boring.
the best
Nobody
team in the East.
wants that.
That's boring. Although you have to look at seeding because you may see the Clippers and Lakers play in the second round, not necessarily in the conference final. I think the one team that could crash the party is the Phoenix Suns. We both have done a 180 on Chris Paul. He's now like my second favorite player in the league, tremendous leader. He's done a great job in Phoenix. Devin Booker is a superstar. You have DeAndre Ayton, who seems to get better every single month. If they can make an addition at the trade deadline, doesn't have to be a huge addition, I think that they could be a team that could cause some serious problems in the West, more so than the Utah Jazz, who right now have the best record in the NBA. But I think they're starting to come back to the pack. And I've said it many times, Jet, and I'll say it to you, Mike, that Utah has the same feel of, say, the Atlanta Hawks from 6 years ago, who had the best record in the East and then got swept by LeBron in the Eastern Conference Finals. I could see Utah getting bounced in the second round, maybe by Phoenix, maybe by the Lakers, maybe by the Clippers. But the one team that's a little bit outside of the box that could really crash the party could be the Phoenix Suns. They could be this year's Miami Heat that make it to the finals in surprise fashion. I don't think they're going to get there. But if I was to pick a team other than the Clippers, Lakers, Nets, and Sixers that could go deep into the playoffs, it would be the Phoenix Suns.
So as a Laker fan, Sap, do they frighten you more without an addition than the Jazz do?
Yeah, actually, neither team really frightens me in the sense because neither really has a great wing defender. I think the Clippers are still a better or a tougher matchup against the Lakers because of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And I still think the Lakers are the favorite to win the West. Once Anthony Davis comes back and shows that he's healthy, and if they can add Hassan Whiteside or a rim protector of that caliber at the trade deadline, I think they're still the favorite in the West. Phoenix doesn't have that wing defender, and neither does Utah, that could really bother LeBron James and at least make him work doubly hard. So that could be something that maybe the Suns or the Jazz are going to look at. Talking about a player, just throw a name out there that got moved at the trade deadline and went to Houston last year, someone like Robert Covington. Not a great player, right? But, a 3-and-D guy who can kind of man up against LeBron for short periods of time and kind of just get in the way. I don't think Phoenix and Utah has that. But as I said, you could see the Clippers and Lakers meet in the second round. That could be a really tough series. Whoever survives that, maybe it's Phoenix waiting for that team, and they could certainly pose some problem.
So bold prediction from Sap is the Suns make the Western Conference Finals. Does that work?
I think it's a real possibility. Yeah.
Now it's in writing, Sap. It's official. All right, Mike, what do you got?
So how bold are we getting here? Because I could
get as really bold as you want to. Get as bold as you want to.
So I think at the start of the season, coming into the regular season, I think for the most part, people had the Lakers most likely repeating as NBA champions. Solid team. I would say, I don't think people will argue this. They got better. They made some moves during the offseason and got better. Taking away Harrell from the Clippers, bringing in Schroeder. Like they upgraded. They upgraded to right next to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. That team updated. So most people are like, well, they updated. They got even better. They're going to have it again. They're going right back to the finals again, most likely win the championship again. But there is a team in the East that made some wild moves. And with all the moves they made, I honestly believe they threw a monkey wrench into that plan of the Lakers automatically being in the finals again. The Lakers will be in the finals, but automatically repeating again. The Brooklyn Nets are winning the NBA Finals, guys. Like, come on. The Brooklyn Nets.
That's not a bold take, Mike. I mean, they're the second favorite right now. And by next week, they're probably going to add someone else to the roster. They're like the Tampa Bay Bucks of the NBA.
You know how many
adding people.
You know how many people think that the Brooklyn Nets will implode eventually because Kyrie Irving's a nutcase and, they can't share the ball. People think that team...
I say my prayers before bed every night that happens to them.
People think that team is going to implode eventually, and I just don't see it happen. Now, I know we got a kind of a small sample size on top of the fact that Kevin Durant hasn't played in like the last 10 games. It's pretty much been the Harden and Irving show. So who knows what it's going to be like when they have to go back to sharing the ball between Durant, Harden, and Kyrie. And then they just added in Blake Griffin, who some people will say, oh, Blake Griffin is ring chasing. I can't believe he went to the Nets. Blake Griffin's not the same guy he was in 2010. And right. I know he was a starter on the Pistons, but he's not giving you more than about 12 points, maybe 5 rebounds, because he's not jumping like he used to. He's not rebounding like he used to. So I wouldn't go as low as saying he's just a role player, but he's not the same guy he was making all-star appearances and whatnot. But it's still a solid addition. And I think Blake Griffin understands he's not going over there to take baskets away from Durant or Harden or Irving. He's just going over there to just add a little toughness, if you want to call Blake Griffin tough, but something that most teams need if you're trying to get to the championship. That's a veteran presence. Blake Griffin's been in this league for a while. He's a veteran presence. I would have definitely took him in Boston, but, that's not how it worked out. But you guys are saying it's not bold. Some people say it is bold. Brooklyn, to me, I think are the automatic favorites. I don't even think it's a question that when, and I'll say this again, when they see the Lakers in the finals, they're going to easily run the Lakers. I know you guys know how I feel about LeBron. You guys know how I feel about LeBron. But Brooklyn is just a different set of players who at any given moment can take over a game. And we've seen some teams like that throughout the course of history. But Brooklyn, the way that team is set up right now, we've heard pick your poison before, but pick your poison in Brooklyn. Wow.
All right, so let me ask you guys this now. If Brooklyn is similar to what Golden State was for 3 years with Durant, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, I think that team fit better together than this Brooklyn team fits together because Steph's a better leader than Kyrie Irving, and Klay Thompson is easier to play with than James Harden, and Durant is Durant. Don't you think that LeBron is better equipped this time around with the Lakers to beat a super team in the finals compared to what happened in 2 of the years when he went head-to-head against Durant and that Golden State team? Mike and Jet, feel free to opine on that.
The Lakers team are definitely better equipped. They definitely have the talent around LeBron as long as they stay healthy to match up well against Brooklyn or any team in the league. But I just feel, and I know you made the comparison to Golden State, but I would make the argument that this team, Brooklyn Nets team, 2020, Klay Thompson is a great player, one of the greatest shooters of all time. And yes, he's had games where he's dropped like 60 points in 3 quarters or with all those crazy stats. But that's within the system, and Klay running through the screens and the plays, and he's just a lights out shooter. So when he shoots, the ball's most likely going in. Klay Thompson's not creating the way that Durant or Harden or Irving can create. But yes, you can get those situations out of Durant and Curry when those Golden State teams were there. But the way the Brooklyn Nets are set up, any given night, those 3 guys alone can go for 90. 90 between 3 guys. 90 any given night. Golden State, they had the firepower, they had a good system, solid coaching, but this Brooklyn Nets team is different, and I really think it would make it difficult for LeBron James and the Lakers, even if they're better equipped and have upgraded from last season.
Yeah, I think the challenge for the Lakers if they face the Nets in the finals is obviously how do you defend all 3 of those guys? That's a challenge for any team to take them on. I mean, LeBron and Anthony Davis are both elite defensive players. LeBron more so when he wants to be is an elite defensive player. but that leaves one guy who's still capable of scoring 30 if they cancel out. So they're going to have to be asking a lot of like a Dennis Schroeder to up his game, and a lot of a Montrezl Harrell that you mentioned too, Mike, to up his game. I think the problem with the Nets is that they're not going to play tremendous defense, but you're going to have to put up 130 to beat them, which is, that's really tough. So the Lakers are going to have to improve on both ends of the court, and any team is going to have to be so efficient on both ends of the court in order to beat them. I will say that the Lakers' big advantage in that series that they would have, if they have an advantage, is that the Nets don't have anybody capable of defending Anthony Davis. So if Davis decides to put on sort of like the alpha hat for that series and say, I'm going to dominate, which he's at time been reluctant to do, I think that's how the Lakers could stand a chance to beat them, because he could put up 40 on them, no problem. They have nobody who can defend the paint. They have nobody who can defend the length of Anthony Davis. And I guess that's the big equalizer there. But I mean, Mike, you're right that those guys on any given night can give you 90, not without any issue. So I'd say the bold prediction that they won't implode, that's a bold prediction. Them going to the finals and winning it is less of a bold prediction. But, I'll allow it. It just seemed like you were hyping it up like it was going to be the boldest prediction of the century. And then we got,
like I'm saying, people don't believe that. I don't think Brooklyn has the hype that I think they should. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But you guys hear it a lot that, Brooklyn is just, because the Sixers are playing some great basketball right now.
They're currently in first place in the East. And
Embiid, like I've said this before in different conversations, Embiid is playing some inspired basketball right now. He's in the MVP conversation for a reason. And I think, Ben Simmons is in a much better situation the way that team's being coached under Doc Rivers. So, and they have some veteran pieces and shooters off the bench and around Simmons and Embiid. So, like, Sixers are the one team that can maybe throw a monkey wrench into the plans in the East.
Yeah, and I think for the same reason that I just said with Anthony Davis being a problem for the Nets, I think Joel Embiid is a massive problem for the Nets. They have nobody to defend the paint or the size to defend somebody like Embiid. So we'll see. If somebody like Andre Drummond gets bought out and goes to the Nets, which a lot of people think he very well may, or the Clippers or the Lakers, but the Nets seem to be the favorite with Drummond right now. Embiid sort of had his way with him, but at least, the more people you can throw at him, the better. So we'll see. But I agree the Sixers are playing really well, although it's just every team in the East has as a measuring stick with the Nets in terms of trying to match up to the scoring. And there's just no way any of those teams can keep up with them, I feel like, in a 7-game series scoring wise. So I'm going to rate Mike's bold prediction as a C for boldness, an A for likelihood. Saps, I'm going to give it, I think that's a solid B to B plus bold prediction, and likelihood, I'd say a C. So I think that works perfectly. It's all going to depend on seeding with yours, Sap. If the Clippers and Lakers meet in the second round, that's a nice gift for the Suns and the Jazz.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. And we've seen LeBron get to the finals as a 4 seed, a 3 seed, a 2 seed, a 1 seed. It doesn't generally matter, although I think this Western Conference is a little deeper than, say, some of the Eastern conferences that he dominated in, because you do have a team like Phoenix. And I didn't mention Portland and Denver, who are right now the 5 and 6 teams. Denver's on a winning streak right now. I don't think they would really pose a problem against the Lakers. Neither would Portland, but those are still quality teams. Denver did oust the Clippers last year. I mean, you could see the Clippers lose in the first round to Denver, 3 versus 6. You could see Phoenix lose to Portland in the first round.
Yeah, sure.
4 versus 5. So the West 1 through 6 is loaded, and then 7 through 10 still pretty good teams in there with Golden State and Dallas if they get their act together, and San Antonio, et cetera. With the East, it seems like we're all in agreement that Philly and Brooklyn are better than the rest, unless Milwaukee somehow figures it out. And look, they're winning about 2/3 of their games when Drew Holiday plays. They're a 50% winning team when he doesn't play, so they're going to need Holiday to be healthy and all on. But to me, it's Giannis, who has problems in the playoffs. He's kind of like Lamar Jackson in football. Regular season, lights out. He gets to the playoffs when it's a little bit different, and he struggles a little bit like Lamar Jackson does in the postseason in the NFL. And then to me, with Middleton and Drew Holiday, you have a couple of guys who I think are threes, not twos. They don't have a Robin on that team. They've got a Batman who doesn't necessarily have the entire skill set to be a Batman. I think he wants to be a Batman in Giannis. And then you got a couple of, Alfred the Butlers. You don't have a Robin on that team, and that's something that at least Philadelphia and Brooklyn certainly has.
It was Batman, Robin, and then in the comics they had like Nightwing or something like that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Robins,
exactly,
but Sap has gone straight to Alfred the Butler.
Right to Alfred the Butler, absolutely.
I really liked the addition of Drew Holiday because I think he's an excellent player, especially as a two-way player. But I agree with you that he's a 3 on a championship level team. Mm-hmm. So all the stuff that Milwaukee gave up for him, I would have preferred them traded for James Harden. I think some of the teams we've mentioned, the Nuggets, the Blazers, and the Bucks, all really screwed up by not getting James Harden. Not in just that they let him go to the Nets, that you're already had Kyrie and Kevin Durant, but I feel like James Harden, if he were swapped for say Jamal Murray or CJ McCollum, any of those, that Nuggets team or that Blazers team, could have been considered legitimate finals contenders as opposed to right now. So I do think the baggage that came with James Harden, teams were spending a little bit too much time focusing on that as opposed to what he could do to improve the team. I mean, James Harden and a Nikola Jokic team would be deadly in my mind. Dame Lillard and James Harden, I think, would be the best backcourt the league has seen in a long time. So I just think that teams really screwed up by not being competitive enough with the offer the Nets gave, which, by the way, is looking worse by the day because Oladipo hasn't been at all productive for the Rockets and is going to seemingly leave in free agency. And the picks that they're getting from Brooklyn are probably going to be bad. I mean, I know they go into the distant future, but it's not like Kyrie and James Harden and Kevin Durant are ancient. They're still in the prime of their careers. Right. So I think that trade looks worse by the day, and a lot of teams certainly could have topped it. But you have this trio of unbelievably talented scorers on Brooklyn, and that's the reality that the NBA has to face, and that Celtics fans have to face, is that the Nets-Lakers finals is an absolute nightmare scenario, and that seems the likeliest finals, which is, I might just put myself into a voluntary coma during that finals if that's an option.
You'll watch.
I will be watching. I tell you that.
I'll be hate watching.
I'm low key. See, the thing with me is I'm a Kevin Durant fan, so I didn't care where Kevin Durant ended up when he left OKC. I didn't care where he ended up after he left Golden State. Wherever Durant goes, I shall follow. And because I know the Celtics aren't looking like a true contender right now, let's go Nets. What's the chance they have in the arena? Let's go Nets. So if I see the Nets in the finals, I want them to win the championship.
But do you have a face mask with Lakers on it like I have, Mike? So you obviously know that my allegiance is to LeBron James. So maybe it's going to come down to LeBron against Kevin Durant in the finals, which has happened 3 times in the past. So why not a 4th time between the two guys who I think are the 2 best players in the league?
I would love to see it. I wouldn't be mad at it at all.
You guys suck. The obvious answer is, from a Celtics perspective, is that both teams get disqualified for illegal gambling. That's the obvious answer for who you root for.
You got to be true, Jet. Come on. We got to be real here. We got to be
Mike,
real.
I'm telling you, seeing the Lakers hoist an 18th banner will make me physically sick. Seeing Kyrie Irving holding an NBA championship trophy will make me physically sick. It's a lose-lose. There's no good outcome for me in that scenario. There's nothing I would not feel physically ill by.
Well, you can't root for the 76ers either, because you guys aren't old enough to remember.
Yes, I can. To beat the Nets, I'm definitely going to root for the Sixers over the Nets.
Okay, so ask your dad this, because your dad.
I know he hates the 76ers, but he hates more Kyrie Irving.
Right, so maybe it's the Clippers. You're going to root for the Clippers, the team in the basement at Staples Center. That's the 4th team that we think has a chance to win. Root for Phoenix. There you go. My long shot special, Jet. Now that you're in love with Chris Paul like I am, for some apparent reason, we've done a 180 on CP3, the both of us. We had like an epiphany. Root for Phoenix then. That could be your sleeper team.
CP3 is a top 5 point guard of all time.
I agree. I always knew his talent, but I always thought he kind of turned me off a little bit. But he's such a perfectionist. And I think after LeBron, he's the smartest player in the league. And sometimes it doesn't mesh well with other players because he's like 3 steps ahead of everybody. And the poor average player on the court may not understand where CP3 is going. You know, it's almost like the great quarterback that's miles ahead of the wide receiver. So I love CP3. Any guy who's like 5'11" with a gut that can't really jump anymore and is still dominant, I got to root for that guy.
CP3, I think he has a little bit of that, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant ass.
A little bit, yeah.
Where like in practice, if you screw up, he's going to let you hear it.
And just call him a dick, Mike. That's the better way to do it.
That's that Jordan and Kobe type of mindset where, like, if you messing up in practice, I'm going to let you hear it.
But he's a dick without any NBA Finals appearances.
Right.
If so those guys went to the Finals
you both have him as a top 5 point guard of all time. Sap, you do too?
Yeah, it's close. I mean, I go obviously Magic 1, Oscar Robertson 2. Are we calling Steph Curry a point guard? Because if he is, then he's number 3. Okay, he's number 3. Isaiah Thomas, who is the player most like CP3, would be number 4. And then after that, I'd put him above John Stockton. I think he's a greater player than John Stockton. He's
Stockton,
much more
Kidd,
explosive.
Nash, those are other guys that would be in the conversation.
He's better than those guys
Maravich.
Because Maravich was more of a 2 or kind of a hybrid. There's a lot of guys that were hybrids, like, Jerry West. A lot of people try to tell me was a point guard. I think he was a 2. There was a point where it was just guards, not point guards, off guards. But CP3 is an all-time top 40 player. And if he can ever win a championship, I think he could, vault into the top 30. I mean, what are we calling Iverson? Is Iverson a point guard, a shooting guard? I mean, this is kind of odd.
I'd always look at him as a 2.
And he's 5'10" and a half. So
I look at, if you're a point guard, you have to be at least somewhat willing to pass.
Right.
So Iverson's assist numbers are not indicative of how much of an unwilling passer he was.
CP3 to me is Isaiah Thomas.
The
same
without
player,
the titles.
Without the titles. I mean, both phenomenal leaders. I think his teammates embraced Isaiah more than Chris Paul's teammates embraced Chris Paul. But both just sensational players. I mean, those are 2 players that if I could be like, show up on the playground because neither was physically imposing. People would say, okay, this guy's going to play with us. He's not going to dominate. Then they go out there and dominate. Obviously, if, LeBron James or Kevin Durant show up to the playground, everyone's going to say, holy crap, these guys, are going to just destroy us. CP3 again is like 5'11" and a half, maybe. And isn't physically imposing, but he's an exquisite player to watch. And look what he does every place he goes. They get better when he shows up. As you said, Jet. Yeah, I mean, he went to Oklahoma City. They were tanking. He got them in the playoffs and nearly upset Houston in the first round last year. Phoenix didn't make the postseason last year, although they were undefeated in the bubble. They didn't even qualify for the postseason. And right now, they're the 2 seed in the Western Conference. A lot of that
Phoenix has been right there with the Knicks and the Timberwolves as one of the worst franchises in basketball the past 10 years or so.
Absolutely. They haven't touched the
been
playoffs
awful
since 2010.
Well, before we move on to our next topic, do you guys have any bold trade predictions for the second half of the season? The trade deadline is just about a week away, 10 days or so. Any big trades? Can you see any big names moving? I'm talking guys who have made the All-Star game.
Ooh, that's tough. I mean,
probably the best player that could be available at the trade deadline is John Collins from Atlanta. Where exactly does he fit? I know the Celtics have shown interest. Heck, the Celtics appear to have interest in everybody, and then they don't make a move. But yeah, I don't think you're going to see any huge moves. But I think you're going to see the contending teams try to add a piece to combat what the other contenders have done.
I think Washington really needs to start reevaluating their future.
They're not going to do it, Mike.
I understand Beal is loyal and he says all the right things, but when are you going to start worrying about the direction of the franchise? You got to start worrying about the direction of the franchise. Beal can get you a lottery pick right now, a lottery pick and a few other pieces right now. But he's loyal. He says all the right things. He's great in the community, great teammate. He's great for the organization. But they're going to end up losing Beal for nothing. If there's a time to move that guy, it is now. The stove is hot right now. Washington has to really consider that. The chances of it happening, I don't know how likely, because I think Washington is just they're just content with how the team is and how bad they are. But you would think the GM has to really consider moving Beal and they can get a lot back for that guy.
You're saying just start from scratch, get like a lottery pick and then tank and bottom out, basically.
They need to. They tried the Wall era, the Beal and Wall era, now the Beal era, and it's just not working. They need to just start from scratch and start all over again and try to rebuild that Washington Wizards. They need to change the jersey. I don't know.
Yeah.
They need to completely scrap whatever they have now and start fresh.
They need an exorcism. What they also could do is most likely trade Beal in the offseason. I don't think it's going to happen at the trade deadline because I believe he has 2 years left in his contract. So, you're going to be an appealing player to move, and it's not
Mike,
at
Sap
ridiculous money.
His evenings trying to work on the trade machine to get Beal to the Lakers for like nothing, for Kuzma
right
and nothing. It's he's been crunching the numbers. It's not going to work.
With LeBron on that team, anything is possible, and I hate it. I
love every minute of it. The league is there for LeBron, as it should be.
I agree with you guys. I don't see any big names, though, Sap. I am intrigued by what you said about Karl-Anthony Towns. I think in the offseason you could see him move. Mm-hmm. And the teams that I mentioned that whiffed on James Harden, the Nuggets, the Trailblazers, the Celtics, too, frankly, the Bucks, I think they'll all be in on trying to get Karl-Anthony Towns because that's coming loose. He's going to get sick of it there. I know him and D'Angelo Russell have barely played together and they're friends. I can tell you that combination won't work anyways. It's
no, it won't.
It's not. So he'll shake loose, and he's gonna end up playing really good basketball on a team that's actually contending because he's got all the talent. It's just that he could use an alpha Sap. He could use to play that Anthony Davis role where he doesn't have to have the whole weight of the world on him.
He might be less of an alpha than Anthony Davis is, if that's possible. I don't know. Is it something about the Kentucky Senators? They're so damn talented. They go there for 1 year, and Davis won the national championship, and Cat went undefeated in the regular season before losing to Georgetown, I think, in the national semifinals. So, yeah, maybe he needs a fresh start. Unfortunately for the Celtics, Kevin McHale is no longer the general manager in Minnesota, so he can't gift wrap Karl-Anthony Towns to the Celtics like he did.
I maintain that was a good trade package.
Yeah, very well.
Al Jefferson was a solid player. Gerald Green had a lot of potential.
Nice up-and-coming young talent. He sure was.
Wasn't Celtics' fault that the pick they gave to the Timberwolves they used on, I think it was who did they use on? I don't even know. It was bad, whatever it was that they gave up. Ryan Gomes, another good player.
Another great player. Yep. Gerald Green, was he involved in that?
Gerald Green. They thought Gerald Green was the next Tracy McGrady.
Yep, that's was not the case. And
could have been.
It kind of sounds like, saying that
won a dunk contest.
A third round compensatory pick for Tom Brady was a fair deal for the Patriots.
This is not a football show.
The 96th pick for Tom Brady. That turned out
You're going to upset founder of Full Press Coverage, Ian Glendon, is going to be very mad at you for making that comment.
Oh, man, I know. I try so hard when I go on with him to not talk about quarterbacks, especially after what happened in the NFC Championship game. Even though my guy outplayed Tom Brady, but that's another time
to discuss that. Let it go.
Here's what I got for trades. Real quick. The Lakers are going to reacquire JaVale McGee. Nothing earth-shattering there. That's just going to happen.
Will Cleveland allow that to happen, though?
Yeah, they'll just because they don't think he'll have any impact, and they're probably sick of him anyways. Anybody who'll take him. Harrison Barnes will go to the Celtics. Everybody who wanted Miles Turner will be disappointed. PJ Tucker will go to the Heat. Andre Drummond will get bought out and end up on the Nets.
Okay.
Those are my trade predictions. John Collins stays put. Whiteside will go to the Lakers and he'll be irrelevant.
I think so.
The name is bigger than the talent there, Sap. He takes so many plays off. He doesn't impact winning at all. I'd rather McGee. Honestly, I'd rather McGee.
Well, if you put the two of them together, because obviously Gasol's not worked out in LA unless he's just saving for the postseason. And Montrezl Harrell's 6'6", so can you really count on him to be a big? Although, in the NBA, we saw PJ Tucker was playing the 5 last year at 6'4". Yeah, high motor guy. That's what you want at that position. But again, when you're going to be facing some teams out west,
they play.
Well, that's the whole thing. We saw that in the postseason last year. In certain series, we didn't see McGee or Dwight Howard. In another series, we saw a lot of McGee and Dwight Howard because the Lakers have the versatility. If they're playing a smaller team, that's the one time Anthony Davis will play what is considered the 5, and he dominates at that position. Anthony Davis doesn't want to play the 5, though, if he's going up against Embiid or Nikola Jokic or DeAndre Ayton. He doesn't want to deal with those guys. So, yeah, it all comes down to matchups. But I think that's pretty much what's going to happen. And Harrison Barnes would probably be a nice addition for the Celtics, not as good as Miles Turner.
Or Gordon Hayward, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Or, Terry Rozier, who's been better than Kemba Walker the last 2 years.
Please, save it.
I know.
I can't.
All right. Well, Sap, you've sufficiently depressed me to move on to our next topic. Although I do have my bold prediction for the Celtics. They finish as the 5 seed and lose in the first round.
Okay. I just want to keep showing my Lakers mask.
Lakers
pretty
finish
mask.
3 seed and win in the first round.
Win in the first round. There you go. Thank you. That's a bold prediction.
They win in the first round.
Prediction.
I think the Nets. I think the Nets will also win in the first round.
I think that's a good pick. Yeah.
There you go. I don't know if
beat
that's
Indiana
too bold.
in the first
That might be too bold for Mike. I'm not sure.
Right.
And that does it for the podcast. Thanks to everybody for listening to both parts of them. Remember, you can find us wherever podcasts are on fullpresscoverage.com. Check it out. Remember to comment and, enjoy, because that's why we do it. See you, everybody.